Welcome back, everybody. Passage to Profit with Richard and Elizabeth Gearhart, our special guest, Jen Thornton. Now we're on to our executive spotlight. Hello, Ashish. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Good. And Ashish Toshniwal is a CEO of Y Media Labs, and they're doing all sorts of incredible things, a very innovative company. And welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So tell us a little bit about Y Media Labs, what you do, and some of the types of businesses that you work with.
Yeah. So what we do is we work with different brands on designing and building their digital footprint, which means that if let's say you're buying something from Home Depot, so we work with them closely on what the app design should look like, how the mobile should function in store versus when you're buying stuff from your living room, and how that whole connected journey for a consumer should be. So we work with a lot of brands, work with Apple, PayPal, Home Depot, a lot of healthcare brands, retailers, banks, so on and so forth.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. I think we've all had the shopping cart experience. I find myself spending quality time with my Amazon account almost every evening. Are there new technologies that are that you can speak about that are related to this journey? Because I think it's really pretty familiar to anybody who's actually ordered anything online.
Yeah, I think more than new technologies, I think there are new trends, because technologies are always there. It's a lot more about adoption. Like, for instance, the COVID has accelerated a lot of trends, which would have happened in the future. But, it's kind of like the progress of 5 years is kind of squeezed into 2 years, in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And what we have seen is people, generally young people, Gen Z and the millennials, they were a lot more digital friendly and a lot more mobile first. But now what we have seen is even the older crowd is a lot more tech friendly, going forward, going through the pandemic. Even, for instance, telehealth, which was never a big thing before pandemic. And now it is becoming the preferred way to connect with your doctor, unless you have something going on where you really have to see a doctor physically.
Right.
Even shopping groceries, right? Like, it's the trend of like buying groceries from your couch or delivering or picking up grocery was very minimal before COVID, and now it's kind of the thing.
But Ashish, don't you think, and I know this from experience, that it's gotten a lot easier to use these tech products? I mean, I remember years ago doing a website and trying to get images onto the site. Now I just do a screenshot with my computer and it has a place I can click a button and on it goes. And with all these shopping things too. So and even Zoom, like the tech during the pandemic for Zoom increased amazingly, right?
Absolutely. I mean, before the pandemic, like, my parents would struggle using Zoom, and now it's like Zoom is kind of second nature in a lot of ways. So it's when you say things have gone easier, it's also about like people have been forced to use some of these things which were pretty easy to begin with, but then now they have experienced that it's so easy, might as well, use it in your daily lives.
Yeah, I heard an interest. I was listening to Gary Vaynerchuk the other day, and he said that the largest group of Facebook users are aged 55 and older. So if you want to target that market, then go to Facebook, which was kind of fascinating. It makes a lot of sense, but yeah. it was an interesting statistic, because you always think of Facebook really, technology not appealing to an older crowd. But I think I wonder if that statistic would have been true 5 years ago. right? And if you couldn't visit your grandchildren in person, you visited them on Facebook and you became more exposed to the technology.
Yeah. I think so.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're socially distancing, but the need of being social is still there, technology is the only way to overcome that.
Right. So Kenya, do you have, I mean, you've lived in digital technology probably your whole life. And
Yeah, for sure. And what's interesting is I wanted to get your take though on like the future of brick and mortar, because I like to shop in the store. Like I'm one of those people that like to touch the actual goods, but I also like to shop online, but have very little patience there if the user experience is poor. But what I've been noticing is that, and Elizabeth, you can attest to this too, because you're a shopper like me. I see less and less people in the store. Like, and I don't know, even on the weekends when I go, like, I just don't see that picking up as quickly as I thought it would return. So I wanted to just kind of get your take there and like how companies are combating that.
Yeah, it's the future of brick and mortar is definitely going to be very much experience first rather than retail first or transaction first. And few things what we are seeing is how companies are using their physical footprint to create a real-time experience, or things which they cannot see online, right? Like, and that's, I think that's going to be the future. Have you ever gone to a store called Beta?
yeah.
No,
Oh,
I haven't.
we have one in our mall here. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you go to that store, so there's one here, in Palo Alto, and that was the first store when they launched. It's like, it's a store where you can experience a lot of these cool gadgets. It's kind of, you can experience, have you heard of the device called Theragun? It's like,
Oh, it's like the thing, the massager, like
yeah.
that were to work out. Yeah.
So now it's a lot more popular, but like 3-4 years ago, that was the first time I saw that. And I was like, man, this is kind of game changer. If you're an athlete and so a lot of that type of experience, you're seeing there for the first time, and something similar is happening kind of across the board. The new Amazon shopping. So when you enter the physical Amazon shop, you're not just seeing stuff, laid out in the store. You're kind of seeing books which are highly rated already. So when the consumers, they're going through the shelves, they know what is probably the best product out there, what customers are saying, which you don't experience typically when you go to any store.
Right. And I would say, if, for example, if you look at Amazon, they acquired Whole Foods. And so, Jeff Bezos must be thinking that part of reaching customers is going to include some sort of retail experience, right? And
Absolutely.
he's looking for ways to integrate the brick and mortar experience with the online experience.
Yeah.
And but I would just to speculate a little bit, I agree, only things that you can actually see. And then there's would be some sort of features where the inventory would be very tightly controlled, and it would only be for certain types of products that people really want to interact with, and that's how you would create the experience. So
Yeah.
Jen.
Yeah, Jen, can you
Comment or
comment?
ask a question?
Sure. So I love that you brought up telehealth. One of our clients is a small medical network, and telehealth seemed really, when that started happening, they were scrambling, what does this mean? They're trying to get their physicians and their providers used to doing telemed. And what I love that has come out of that, and what we have found within their organization, is that people are following up with their doctors. They are making an appointment because they know they can jump on and do it from, on their lunch break, and they don't have that drive time. So I really hope that telehealth continues. I hope our insurance organizations continue to support that here in the US, because it is making a difference, and people are seeing their doctor when they need to, because now it is easier. So I love that you brought that up, and I think that's fantastic. So when you think about all of this time that in theory you should save, if you're not driving to the grocery store, you're not maybe driving to brick and mortar, and you're doing so much on these apps, where are people spending that extra time? Where does that time go? And do you know where people then spend that time that they gain back?
Listening to
Well,
Passage to Profit.
Ah, I love that one.
that too. You know, I can tell you like how I have personally, so I have two kids, 8-year-old and 4-year-old, and I have never spent so much time with them before the pandemic, right? It's like I used to travel almost every week, you know, somewhere or the other. And by the time I would come home, even when I'm here, like they're already in bed. And so what I have realized is the quality of life for people who are working from home, who can work from home, who have the luxury to work from home, and who are, you know, who can afford to save time, like using this kind of technology, has gone up overall, right? Like spending more time with kids, you know, reducing travel time, and even I would say like spending time on yourself, like the awareness of mental health has gone up so much, even though there was a need even before the pandemic. But I think people are recognizing now that like it is important to spend time, you know, for on yourself. Like one of the things we have done at YML is this summer, we could experience that people are working very hard. The lines between work and you know home is blurry, right? And people are kind of extending themselves. And what we came up with this summer was at 2 p.m. every Friday, we are going to give people off, right? So that they can work on themselves, spend an extra afternoon with their family. And that was a massive hit. And that doesn't mean that we are, you know, asking people not to deliver, you know, what they're supposed to deliver, but we are just giving them the ownership to their schedule a little more. And after that summer, we have kind of continued that thing forever. So that summer Friday turned into Forever Friday at YML. And that's kind of the trend, you know, we are seeing in general, right? Like happening in the world.
Ashish, you are a TED speaker and you also have a podcast. And you've been on TV quite a bit. And your podcast is Why in the Valley. And I love this tagline, a podcast for those who follow the change, not the plan. So what is your podcast about?
Yeah, so in the pandemic, you know, we as a business, we experienced a lot of change. There's a lot of change in culture, a lot of change in how we just live, right? And every business is going through a change. And so I thought, you know, it would be great to talk to CEOs, founders, entrepreneurs who have experienced this level of change in their company and in their startup, and bring up that story to the world that it's, you know, COVID is the best example of like plans are great until it's not. And, you know, you just have to follow the change, and people who can follow the change are the people who are most resilient. And the podcast is a lot about bringing up stories on how, you know, leaders have navigated the change in their company, you know, building product, consumer behavior, so on and so forth.
Very good. You know, Jen, I know you had a comment. We still have a little time left on this segment, so please go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to comment about, you know, thinking about that, you know, work from home and brick and mortar buildings and everything that's going on. And I love the approach that you're taking, because it is that integration. And I think that, you know, for so long, we felt like work-life balance was this, like, you know, very blocked, like I have to work this time and I have to be home this time. And I think that as employees or as employers, if we can teach people how to integrate, you know, you may work, you know, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m., take a couple hours off with your kids and then go back in a couple of hours, and really being flexible and integrating a schedule versus these two worlds that never collide. I think that's a trend that we'll be seeing, but organizations have to do things like thinking about, you know, that schedule differently to ensure that we can create that integration so that it creates a new type of balance, and a balance that works in the way that we live our life today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the idea of giving Friday off. I'd like to take Friday off, quite honestly. So, but I did have one more question, and then I think we have to wrap up for Ashish. What do you see as the future trends now in terms of social and technical trends that you're sort of aside from not being able to know or predict change with 100% certainty, but what trends are you focusing on now going forward?
I think like one of the trend we are seeing is people are a lot more aware of, their health and how they can invest in themselves, whether it's, using Peloton or using Apple Fitness or, doing such things at home. And one trend with telehealth is, on one side, yes, it is obviously a lot more convenient to see a doctor from your living room if you don't have to go and see the person, but see the doctor. But on the other side, you are also increasing your touch point with your physician a lot more, which obviously reduces, health risk in the long run, right? Like otherwise, when in the pre-COVID world, like seeing a doctor was a half a day process, including commute time and everything. And because of that, a lot of people were not able to see the doctor when they should have, right? And I feel those things will continue to change, and the technology is making all those things happen.
That's wonderful. We've come to the end of this segment, but we still have a lot of really great content coming up. So listeners, you are listening to Passage to Profit, the Inventor Show on WOR 710. If you missed the first part of the show, we had some great advice for entrepreneurs and some great stories. So our podcast comes out tomorrow, and you can find us on YouTube as well. Right now, we're going to break, so we'll be right back.